Welcome to the very first episode of the Crypto Cartel Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Brus.
And I'm Ed Anderson. Like all podcasts, the first episode is all about what to expect from the show, what you're going to learn. And Rob and I are going to share a little bit about our background and experience.
I'm so happy to be doing this show with Ed, and it's hard for me to share with you just how excited we are to be bringing you this content. This podcast is not like any other show in the crypto space. Be prepared to laugh, to cry, to be outraged, to be encouraged, to be hopeful, but most of all, be prepared to have this show feel like your new home for crypto.
Rob and I, are just a couple of guys making our way in the world, and we'll be sharing our experiences with you and taking you on a journey into the future of finance while contrasting that with the evil cabal that controls us all.
Yeah, it's our plan to show you a much brighter alternative future. So let's get started. Well, g'day, Ed. How you going, mate?
Hey, Rob. How are you today?
I'm really good. I'm finally pressing the record button here, and I'm so excited to be doing this. It's just, you and I have had so many conversations over the last, 6 months, and every time I have one with you, I think I should be pressing the record button. So now we get to do that, and I'm really excited to be bringing that to life. What about you, man? How are you feeling about it all?
Same here, Rob. I can't wait, to get into this. I have so much I want to share with you and our listeners and viewers, and I can't wait to get into these important and topical conversations with you and, our amazing guests.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Whenever I teach somebody how to kick off a podcast, and I must have done 40 or 50 of those with different clients over the years now, I always start off by asking them, what is it that you could talk about for 1,000 episodes? And sometimes people look at me with a blank stare and they're like, oh man, I've probably only got 10 episodes in me. Well, that's a topic that we shouldn't be talking about. And I know that you and I could probably talk about this topic for about 10,000 episodes. So that's part of the reason why I'm really excited to be doing this with you. And I want to share a little bit about why we put this podcast together and what this is all about. So why don't you kick us off and tell us why we decided to do this?
Well, Rob, there are a couple of reasons why. First, it's to build a more awareness around crypto and how to grow your wealth with it. Second, is to show people that the system that we live in really is a lie. Your leaders are all liars. Your banking system is fake. That cash that you have in your wallet is not real. And those numbers in the computers in your bank account, they're not anymore real. So the fiat system, that we live under is controlled by just a few. And like you, Rob, I want as many people as possible to know this. But also what I want them to know is that the fiat system is totally fake and it's about to collapse. And I believe that life as we know it is about to change. We are in a moment of time. And, more than just what happened with the pandemic and COVID lately. Now, what about you, Bob? Why did you create this podcast anyway?
Well, like you, man, I've got a couple of reasons, and I love what you're talking about there, as it's like the system is fake, the leaders are fake. That is just so unbelievably true. It holds true here in Australia, as I know it does there for you in the States as well. I wanted to do this because you share the same worldview as me, and you've got almost identical family values to me as well, and your mindset around hard work and money is the same. And, we've had a lot of conversations about both of us saying that we come from very, very lucky countries. They say Australia is the lucky country. If you have a go, you'll get a go. That's kind of the vernacular that we use down under here. And it's true. It's never been more true than now in these really trying times with pandemics and lockdowns and all of that sort of stuff. But I think over the years, pre-pandemic, both of us have been able to take advantage of the opportunities that living in a free society has given us. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do this show with you was to remind people that despite all of the craziness that's going on in the world and all of the madness that's going on around you, you can still win and you can prosper even when it seems like that just wouldn't be possible. I know for me, my back was against the wall earlier on in the year here in 2021, and I had to pivot hard. I had to change really, really hard. Things had gone from bad to worse. My businesses had completely collapsed. I had no no line of sight to income. All my cash flow had dried up because the government had locked us down and my businesses had went away. And it's stressful. It's very, very stressful. And I decided I would pivot. And there's many ways that you can pivot in your life. And crypto is one of those things. And I believe that crypto is the fastest way to get the job done. And I'm absolute proof that is the case. And over the next couple of podcasts, we're going to share our stories and I'll share with you exactly how I did that. But look, the second reason I wanted to do this is because I believe that crypto and blockchain is the alternative system. And together, these things represent a really hopeful future. They represent hope for individuals and humanity as a collective, because the things that are holding us back from a brighter future are the evil cabal and the evil banking system and the idiot leaders and the rigged political system that we all live under. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I'll give you a funny example. You know, there's an election coming up around here, a local election just where I live. And whenever I walk out the front, I see these signs of vote for me. This is John Smith, independent for this area around here. And wherever I go around here, I'm seeing these signs. And one of the things that dawned upon me is that they put these signs on the council strip and they do whatever they want because they're trying to get people to vote for them. But if I went down the street and I put a sign for my business down there, the same way they put a sign there to vote for them, the council would be knocking on my door and the police would give me a fine within the next 15 minutes. I promise you that politicians do and say whatever the hell they want to get into power and to hold on to that power. And that's part of the corruption and the rigged system that we all live under, you know. And I look at these people and I think, you're doing whatever you want at the beginning of this election cycle. So that says to me, that's the precedent that you're setting. You're doing whatever you want by breaking the law to try and get elected, because I'm not allowed to put a sign down there. Because if I put a sign down there, they'd say I'm breaking the law and you've got to get out of here and you're going to get fined and go and get rid of your signs. And politicians are doing that to begin with. That just says to me exactly how they all are. And this is not, I'm not here to hate on politicians or hate on a system or something like that. I'm here just to share facts with people. And I think once you hear some of the things that Ed and I have got to say in this podcast and the conversations that we have with the guests that we are going to be having on this show, is that you're never going to be able to unhear these things or unsee these things again. And it goes to the very heart of that analogy, is you just can't put the toothpaste back in the tube once it comes out. You just can't. You know, if you're faced with the opportunity to take the red pill or the blue pill and you decide to take the red pill and get out of the matrix, you can't take a blue one to try and get back in. And your job as the listener and the viewer of this show is to question everything that Ed and I are talking about on this show. This show represents our opinion, but it will also be a reminder of the lessons from history and some of the really evil things that have been perpetrated by the banks and governments. And it will show you that what you think is a mistake or an accident or incompetence from government, from banks, or from a system is actually a plan unfolding it's unfolding in front of you in plain sight. And we're going to show you what to look out for and how to spot it. And your job is to question and to draw all of your own conclusions about what Ed and I have got to say. We believe blockchain is the future. We believe that crypto is the future, and it represents hope for us as individuals and us as humanity. Okay, so with all of that said, let's take a little break and we'll be right back with some more, and we'll share with you exactly what you can expect from the Crypto Cartel Podcast.
So, Rob, what can people expect in terms of output from this podcast?
Well, to begin, I'm going to annoy the hell out of you, Ed, and we're going to be recording lots and lots of shows to build a body of work, because what we want is when people discover our podcast, we want them to binge on it. So there'll be enough content to do exactly that. So by the time we launch this show, there'll be 10 to 20 episodes, and they'll reside in Apple Podcast, in Spotify, and all the places that you can find podcasts. And once we've sent that live with 10 to 20 episodes, you can expect 1 to 2 shows per week.
Okay, so what kind of content can listeners and viewers expect?
Well, there'll be shows with just you and I. That'll be probably the largest body of work that we have within our library of content, but there'll be some monologues as well. I like to do monologues and record them all the time, and I know that you like to have the ability to do that, and you do that in your YouTube channel really well. So you can expect shows with both Ed and I. You can expect monologues just with me by myself and with Ed by himself as well. And every now and then we're going to have a bunch of interviews with expert guests that are coming on as well. So don't expect to, so that's what you're going to hear. But what I wanted to do is to set an expectation here as well is we're not necessarily going to be doing reviews about the latest crypto thing or the latest crypto this or the latest crypto that. And the reason for that is it's impossible to keep up with all of the things that are happening. And when the latest fork of Olympus DAO finance comes out, it lives for a week. So what we don't want to do is create content where we're trying to go viral about the next exciting crypto thing, but in a week's time, the thing is completely irrelevant. It doesn't make sense to be making content in the crypto space about that. So this show will be more of a macro view of crypto rather than the granular micro detail of the exact things that are going on there. If Ed and I are getting involved in something, we may talk about that thing from a bit more of a micro perspective, but most of the content you hear on this show will be from a more macro perspective and more fundamental perspective, if you like, as well. So Ed, let's share a little bit more about us for the listeners and the viewers. I've been doing a lot of talking here on the podcast, as I always do. That's why I love podcasts, because I love to chat and share this. But why don't we go with you first? First of all, where are you dialing in from the world? Because there's two completely different accents on this call, and people might be thinking, what the hell?
Well, I'm in Minnesota. I'm in a small suburb called Wayzata, which is a western suburb of Minneapolis.
Very nice. And have you always lived in Minnesota, or is that somewhere that you've arrived at recently?
No, I was born and raised in Minnesota. Then I went away to college, and then I studied a little bit in Italy, spent a year in graduate school, and then I lived for 3 years in Japan. That's a whole separate story, kind of a funny one. Then I met a girl. That's another long story, and somehow ended up in New York. And then, and we got married and pregnant right away. So I had to figure out a way to make actual money. So what does someone do?
Very nice.
Yeah, I lived in New York for 6 years. And then when the boys got to kindergarten age, I moved back to Minnesota and been here ever since.
Yeah, nice one. And what did you study at college?
I triple majored in history, English, and ancient Greek.
No way. Can you speak those languages?
Yeah,
can you speak ancient Greek?
Languages do not come easily to me. I'm one of those people where I've got to grind it out. So studying Greek and Latin was very useful to me. Learning how to diagram sentences, learning how to find roots and how to extrapolate, words. So it's very useful. But, in college, I was kind of an academic snob. I kind of looked up at my finance and business major friends, and boy, I wish I'd taken a few, in hindsight. So that was my official academic training. Then I got the real world training in finance when I hit Wall Street.
Did your degrees serve you in your life at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, my whole intent on going to college was to learn about the world because I wanted to travel. I grew up in the basement of my house in Minnesota. Minnesota's cold enough as it is, but I was in the freaking basement, where it's like a freezer. And I grew up watching episodes of movies that took, like Mutiny and the Bounty, set in tropical place. I wanted to travel, man. I wanted to get out of Minnesota. That was my day. That was my dream. So I wanted to see the world. So I thought, well, when I go to college, I want to learn history. I want to learn I want to learn, about the world. I wanted to study, the big thinkers of history and stuff like that. So that was why that was really why I triple majored in those three things. So the whole idea of learning about finance and business kind of bored the hell out of me at that age. Then I grew up.
Fair enough too. And you mentioned you got a couple of kids there. I assume that they're all grown up now?
Yep. 2 boys. They're both grown. The older one is back in New York, ironically. He owns a pizzeria in Brooklyn, New York. Randazzo's Pizza, for anybody who wants to check him out, on Ditmas. So Vincent is in New York and Ryan is here with me. Both boys are grown and I couldn't be more proud of my sons.
Very nice, very nice. Nice to hear. I'm sure as we scale out these podcasts, we'll learn more about your family and whatnot as well, because we're not one-dimensional beings. There's way more to us than just crypto and finance in this podcast. So it'd be good to get to know a little bit more about your family and your kids as well, which is really cool. You mentioned there, Ed, that when you came back from Japan, you moved to New York and you kind of had to get a proper life education there, not an academic one. What was that the largest part of your career, was working on Wall Street? What was the main thing that you've done through your career?
Oh, yeah, that was once I started working on Wall Street, I've been in that field ever since. Now, like I said, I kind of fell into it. Before I landed in New York, I had no interest. I didn't even know what a stock was. So, but then I had my first kid. We were pregnant with my first kid, and all of a sudden, I had to figure out a way to make actual money. So what does someone do when they're in New York and they have to make money? Go to work on Wall Street. So that naivete kind of, I kind of went in with a naive. So I started out as a stockbroker and worked my way up to a trader and then trading instructor. And then when the boys got to kindergarten age, we decided we didn't want to raise them in New York. So we brought them back to Minnesota. But I stayed in the field. I kept teaching people how to trade. I actually ended up designing, it's either the first or one of the very first trading classes that was available to the public in the country. And I taught the average person how to trade stocks. And yeah, so I ended up loving trading. And it is still my big passion career-wise is trading. But trading is kind of a wide net. That term, it covers a lot of areas, right? But the whole idea behind trading and the technical stuff, and I like puzzles, and trading is a lot like a puzzle. But I also like human psychology, and we'll save that for a whole nother episode, because you know how I feel about it. The trading and the market in general is all about psychology. It's all about people. So because it kind of ends up feeding into my real passions in life, people and psychology and sociology and history, for that matter, it just really worked out well for me. So I will always trade just because I love doing it.
Do you do a lot of it these days?
I not as much anymore, because I found other areas that in the same field, right, in the same sphere, but not actively trading. But I'm still applying trading rules to the things that I'm doing, like with crypto. Because I know that eventually that's where we're leading to, right? The whole subject on cryptos. So I'm relatively new to the crypto sphere, but the whole, crypto industry is very young. Not many people are involved in cryptos. Not many people in the world even know about cryptos. So I don't feel bad like I really missed the boat, because it's still a very young industry. But there are many corners to that industry, right? So there's a lot to learn. So I am taking on the challenge of learning the new lingo and applying my trading knowledge to it. And because the rules behind trading are not escapable, okay? They still apply to the crypto world as well, because you're still working with people. So I really have the best of both worlds right now. I'm just trying to get my crypto lingo up to the same level as my trading lingo. So that's
and that right there is difficult to do, because there's always something new. And so I'll send you a link and say, check this out. And you're like, oh, that's awesome. Thanks, man. And there's always and the reason you go, oh, that's awesome, is because there's a learning curve there. And you see somebody that shows you or shares a hot tip with you, and you think they're already off the learning curve. They understand this. Now I've got to play catch up with that. How long have you been doing this crypto thing for, Ed? Has it just been a couple of months, a year, or you've had your eye on it for a while?
It's been about 18 months. I guess it depends on what you mean by how long I've been into it. I mean, I've known about it since the beginning, but I haven't really participated actively in it. About 18 months now, where I started, nibbling around the edges. And then I started taking the deep dive, I don't know, probably about 6, 7 months ago, where I really started to delve into it. One, because you and I are involved in another project together at the blockchain related opportunity.
Yep.
And so in the process of being in that, I've learned quite a bit about the blockchain industry, which is, you can't do cryptos without blockchain. And in the process of doing that deep dive into blockchain, you start learning about all the other stuff. You can't, it's like pulling on a thread, right? You can't just learn one with cryptos. If you're going to learn about one part of it, you're going to have to learn about other parts of it.
Absolutely.
That's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, it is. It is. And what about one of the things that I think is an interesting juxtaposition, if you like, is, Wall Street and stockbroking and trading in the regular space there, and what the people are there. How do you find the people in the crypto space compared to the people in the real physical world? Is it different?
Yes. Okay. So on the Wall Street side, you have two sides of the coin, right? You have the retail side, people like you and me. And then you've got the professionals, the insiders who know things that the average person does not know. And they take advantage of the retail client not knowing certain things. Now, I've been kind of spilling the beans a little bit over the past several years, giving them the inside tricks of the trade about regarding trading. So the retail, there's always that retail side, the people who are the foot soldiers, the army, and maybe a little naive, versus the professionals who know all the tricks of the trade. Sure, that's true in the crypto space as well. You have the multitudes of people out there who've heard about crypto, and they've heard the wonderful stories of some guy who bought Bitcoin 5 years ago, for nothing, and now he's a multimillionaire, maybe even a billionaire, and they want a piece of that too. But they don't take the time to really learn it. They know the buzzwords, right? They know cryptocurrency, they know Bitcoin, they know the few of the buzzwords, just enough to make them curious about it, but not really get involved in a serious way. And then you've got other people where this is what they do all day long. They sit and they study cryptos inside and out, and there's a lot to learn. I mean, I am sure if there's not a master's degree program out there by now in cryptocurrencies, there will be. I'm sure pretty soon you're going to see courses taught at, MBAs or master's degrees in cryptocurrencies at these big, so, I mean, it has to happen because crypto is so integral right now. So started to go down a rabbit hole there, Rob. Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's good stuff. That's really good. Learning something new can be fun. It can be exciting. But if you put yourself under pressure or under some sort of duress because you're trying to make money out of it, it can be a really negative thing as well. So, I see people working a job for 3,000 or 4,000 hours a year, and they hate every moment of it, and but they can't leave because I've got a mortgage to pay, or I've got some other BS thing some other excuse that they have, right? But the reality is, those same people won't spend 100 hours learning, 10 hours a week over 10 weeks, trying to learn something new about crypto and whatnot. Things like this don't come easy. They're big topics. They're really, really difficult to understand. And, it's our goal here on this podcast with you and I, Ed, to try and demystify a lot of that stuff, because you can break it down. I always remember you telling me a story when you started your instruction of trading. The size of the book was about an inch thick. And by the time you're finished, it's like, a quarter of the size, because you just take out all the things you don't need to know. And that's the idea of this podcast. And I think that's the idea of any podcast or any video that you watch on YouTube, is to give you a shortcut. If something is better, faster, or cheaper, people will move towards it. And I think that that's what these videos and these bite-sized chunks of information are all about. It's better, faster, and cheaper than you having to go and pay and learn things. Tell me, mate, after all of that, do you miss your Wall Street career at all? Do you miss teaching people? Do you miss any of that stuff?
Well, I don't miss the Wall Street career so much because it's pretty stressful. I wasn't this gray. I mean, I should not be this gray. All right. Between, my ex-wife and my Wall Street career, that's how I got this way. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I mean, it's a stressful life. Trading is a stressful life. Now, the teaching part of it, I really loved. The idea, my favorite sound in the whole world is, when someone
The
gets
penny
something,
dropping.
when someone gets something that you're explaining to them, and you manage to explain it in a way that they understand, and they have that little eureka moment, that's a very satisfying feeling. And so, whenever I try to teach people anything now, is I try to take a complex, idea and boil it down to a simple to understand, lesson. And that's a challenge because you got to think it through. You got to boil things down. So I actually love that part, the teaching part. And of course, when I'm trading for myself, that's very stress free because I don't have other people's money at risk. It's just me, and I know my trading skin, right? So as a trader, that is the holy grail. Just like with cryptos, okay, you're going to have to find what you like. And that could take some experimenting. That could take a little trial and error. Try as much as you can to learn from other people's experiences. But at some point, you're going to have to find your trading skin, or in the case of cryptos, your crypto skin. You're going to have to find what corner of the field, really rings a bell for you. Really, it rings true. And that just comes from what sailors would call time on the water, right? You just have to do it.
Yeah, totally. I think you said it really succinctly when you said trading. Well, that's like a big term. And I think you could define it by saying that's a catch-all. So when you say trading, what are you trading? Commodities, futures? Are you trading stocks or what are you trading? Trading is a catch-all. And I think crypto is a catch-all as well. And you've got to find and refine those little niches and find what's interesting and stimulating for you. You might get into crypto and look at something like you just don't have the time to look at these things. So you just want to buy something and hold on to it. And I just want to go back to my life. You might think, well, if I go over here and buy these coins or tokens and I go and stake them over here, then I can get this incredible APY. That's something a little bit more up my alley, and I'm a little bit more involved. So do you want to be actively involved in crypto, or do you want to be passively involved in crypto? And that's the same as trading. I can go and build a stock portfolio and just buy I take 10% of my net wealth and buy an index fund. And over 10 years, I get a 10% gain over 10 years. Every year for 10 years, I've got 100% more than what I started with. So it could be as simple as that as well. So just because we say crypto and blockchain, please, ladies and gentlemen, if you're kind of new to this space, don't be scared of it and don't be worried about it. All right, Ed, last question for you, mate. If people were getting into crypto for the first time, what is the one piece of advice that you would have for them? Because when I look back at it, I think, man, I made a lot of mistakes, and let's shortcut. Let's be better, faster, and cheaper for people and stop them from making the mistakes. What would you say to that question?
Yeah, well, plan on taking the time to get educated. Don't just watch one YouTube video from some guy out there and think that you're all set. It's going to take a little bit of effort. So plan on putting a little bit of time and effort in learning about cryptos, and do it in bite-sized pieces. Now, unless you're retired or for some reason you have time on your hands, which most people don't. If you do have time on your hands, go ahead and spend your weekend, spend your days, studying this stuff. But for most people, do it in bite-sized pieces. You and I belong to the Crypto Cartel, which I think is a wonderful starting point, a wealth of like a one-stop shop for people to get little bite-sized pieces of education out there. So learn things in pieces, and those pieces will come together. It's real easy to get overwhelmed in the whole field of cryptos. So don't just when you find yourself being overwhelmed, just know that you're in really good company. Everybody else is just as overwhelmed as you are. But after studying a bite-sized piece here and a bite-sized piece there, pretty soon you're going to be out having drinks with friends, and you're going to be talking about dexes and bid points, and you're going to be throwing terms around, and you're going to be making their head spin, and you'll be surprising yourself. So just learn in bite-sized pieces. I guess that would be. And when you do start dipping your toe in, treat it with the respect it deserves. You don't go all in on the first little idea you hear about on YouTube. have a plan. Come up with a plan. Your plan, when I'm teaching people to trade, I tell people that your plan is far more important than picking the right stock. What's your plan? Why are you buying it? Okay, once you're in it, what do you do? Any idiot can buy a stock. The hard question is, what do you do after you own it? Okay, so come up with the plans. Just think things through and take it slow. It'll come to you. And watch as many of our podcasts as you can.
That's a good piece of advice there. That's a good one there. Nice one.
All right. That's enough about me, Rob. Now, let's find out some more about you. So tell the folks where you're located.
Well, I'm on the other end of the clock in a place called Cronulla in Sydney, Australia. I live about maybe a 5-minute walk away from the beach. And even though we've had some pretty horrendous things happen to us in the last 18 months here in Australia with lockdowns and COVID and all the craziness that's been going on, it really hasn't affected me too much because of where I'm located. I'm out and about all the time. I'm by the ocean. I'm really fortunate to be where I am, and it's one of the most beautiful places in all of Australia.
And do you have kids?
I do. I've got a 15-year-old daughter who's, if anyone's got a daughter out there 15 years old, you'll know that that's probably going on 25 years of age. So she's really super mature for her age, which is really nice. And I've got a great relationship with her and a great bond with her. But I've also got some grown-up boys as well. My other son, Travis, who is 19, he's about to turn 20, and my other son, Cam, who's about to turn 21. So again, great relationships with them. I'm pretty excited for the new year with Travis, actually. We've been talking about it for a little while, and I've had quite a bit of success in the crypto space in the last couple of months. I've been doing really well. And I said to myself at the start of the year, what is the first thing that I'm going to do when I get a little bit of success in crypto? What do I need? And the reality is I don't need anything. I live in a really nice place. So I've got a car, I've got 2 cars, I've got everything that I want. I don't really want for anything, right? I think the older you get, the less you want for things. But I do want to have some bigger and better experiences with my kids, because one day you'll be dead and gone, and all I have is the memories and the things that you leave to them, of course. And Travis and I are going to go and get our skydiving license together in January. So that's one of the things that I said I was going to splurge on. And here we are at the end of the year. It's going to be a nice little reward. And I'm really excited to be doing that with him. He's excited too. I've told him to watch all of the videos where people are getting hurt and all the malfunctions and all the things that can go wrong. And I said, are you sure you want to get involved in this? You sure? A lot of stuff can go wrong, you can lose your life or get hurt really badly. And he's like, yeah, whatever, And I thought, I love it. When I was 19 years old, I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and it was not going to happen to me either. And if I'm completely honest about it, I've watched all those videos and I found them all and sent them all to him. And I was like, man, should I be doing this? Should I be I'm in my mind, I've got to check myself and go, oh, yeah. But I'm excited to be doing that. So it's going to be good fun. In early January, we're going to go and do that.
Oh, I know he's going to love it. Good for you. Now, you have a very varied background. So what would you consider the main part of your career?
I grew up in the military. I was in the Royal Australian Navy for 5 years and the Australian Army for 5 years as well. Those careers were back to back. So I did, it wasn't quite 10 years. It was about 9 3/4 years is what it was in the end. And I traveled the world. And when I was a kid, I always wanted to run around with a gun and kick in a door and do all those sorts of things. So I got to do that for real, which was enormously gratifying. But it's hard when you achieve everything that you've ever wanted in your life and you've set out to achieve. When you're a young person, the rest of your life seems really boring and slow. And I left the military when I was 28, almost 29. Yeah, I was 28 years old when I left, and I turned 29 the month after I got out. And being that young and thinking, well, what else is there in life was really hard. And when I left the military, I had an electrical contracting company that did really well. I got out of that and always wanted to drive a truck. I don't know where I never got a truck license in the Army. I never got a chance to do that. Love big machines. I like to fly airplanes. I wanted to drive a truck, and I did that for a little while. That was good fun. And I almost bought a truck. I never got into that business though, because it looked like once you were in there, you could never extract yourself out of it. And there was so many unknowns in a business like that. Like the guys that I drove for, I'd drive the truck and it'd work perfectly for 3 weeks, and then something would break on it and would be out of action for 5 days, and I'd be off work for 5 days. And you're like, man, that must have cost $20,000, $30,000 to fix. And imagine having those bills if you were just a sole operator, and how would you cover those costs? And man, there's so many unknowns in a business like that. And I see trucks around town as sole traders and sole operators and think, man, that's just tough. There's got to be a better way. And I discovered in my electrical contracting company, I had to build a website early on in those days. And back in the early 2000s, you probably remember that building a website would cost you anywhere from 10 grand to about 100 grand, because it was a really super specialized skill. Back in the day, there was no such thing as WordPress or all of these content management systems that we have today. So I figured that I didn't have 50 grand to spend on a website, so I'll figure out how to do this myself. And I did. And shortly after that, I discovered that I actually liked doing that. And I made a couple of other things. And then people were like, hey, can you do that for me? Can you do that for me? And I sort of fell into it. It's a little bit like your career in Wall Street, right? What are you going to do? I better go and get a proper job. And I had that business, and I got out of that electrical contracting business, and then I started building websites, and it was a bunch of things. And we had another kid, like Danielle came along, and there's without boring you with my life story, but around 2007, this thing came out. You might remember it. It was one of the biggest things in human history. It's called the iPhone. And at that point, I was building iPhone apps. And at that point, everybody had the latest and greatest idea for an iPhone app. And I was lucky to be able to capitalize and get the upside of that as well. And a couple of years later, social media came out, and I was able to capitalize on all of that and help people get started and running advertising. And, I've had a pretty extensive career in digital marketing. And you asked me, what's been the biggest part of my career? The biggest influence on my career is the military, of course, because I grew up in there. I joined when I was 17 and left when I was 28. And so it's a large part of my life, and that kind of sets the foundation of everything else that is ahead of you. But my entrepreneurial career has spanned since 2002 till today. So what is that? Nearly 19 years, almost 20 years. So that would be the bulk of what I've done. But the word entrepreneur is a catch-all as well. I've been in all sorts of deals. I've been in property deals, business deals, software as a service deals, advertising deals, marketing deals, all sorts of deals that are out there in an attempt to make more money and to create more recurring revenue. And when the pandemic struck here in Australia and all the lockdowns happened, for better or worse, for right or wrong, it killed both of the businesses that I had, the PR business that I have and the photography and videography business that I had, gone, because those things are all discretionary spends and people just don't need them anymore. And that's when I pivoted back into crypto. I was in crypto in 2017. I did pretty well in a whole bunch of arbitrage trading and some day trading doing that. And I bought Bitcoin just before the bull run in 2017, and I cashed out at the top. So I did really well out of that. And once I got out of crypto, I kind of like, hey, well, what now? So what? And then it went into the doldrums, if you like. It was in the quiet years from 2018 till really just a couple of months ago when it sort of came back to life, and I wasn't in it. So when all of this happened with the pandemic and all of these businesses stopped for me, that's when I got back into crypto. I always had one eye on it, thinking maybe there's something there. Maybe I should dive back in. Maybe a little bit like you've been lurking around it for a little while and thought, all right, now it's time to get into it. And I did. I've been lucky. And now today, every day I make more money than both of those businesses combined every single day. So I make more money in one day than I would typically do in a week of those businesses. And I do it as recurring income. And I've set a whole bunch of rules for myself. I don't get involved in anything in crypto that's not recurring income. I don't look at it unless it's going to give me a 2 or a 3x. And there's a whole bunch of rules that we'll go into in a couple of podcasts coming up. And it's been really fun to write those podcasts and write the points for them, because it's helped me to reiterate the rules that I've got for myself. And it's helped me to become hugely time free. I mean, when you solve your money problems, and you solve your money problems with crypto, that's awesome, but you still have problems. Your problems don't go away. All you've solved is your money problem. But once you solve the problem of money in your life, all of a sudden you have time, and you have to figure out who you actually want to become to get to the next level in your life. So the last year of my life has been very introspective, and it's been very humbling in a lot of ways. And I've spent a lot of time reflecting on where I've been and where I've come from. But then I kind of drew a line in the sand to say, well, that's it. I'm never, ever going back to any of those things. from here on in, I have to become a different version of myself to keep moving forward and to really build enough runway in the crypto space to last for the rest of my life. So that's been pretty exciting. So, the military was the beginning of my career. The entrepreneurial stuff was the middle of it, and crypto will be the end of the career. That's what I'll do for the rest of my life, I think.
You think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because it's not that I won't do anything.
You're like, what, 24 years old? I mean,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's not that I won't do anything else. Crypto will provide me the runway I need to do whatever I want for the rest of my life. But this is actually what I want to do. And I'm excited to be on this journey. And I'm excited to be on this journey with you, Ed.
Yeah, same here. I know what you mean. I think the whole crypto world is so much, and it's so exciting, right? I haven't felt this excited about a new opportunity for a long time. I mean, I got into my routine, and my routine was serving me just fine. But then this comes along, and it's just plain exciting, knowing that, we are in, you're going to hear this phrase a lot. I'm sorry, people, you're going to hear this phrase a lot during our podcast, but we are in a moment in time in history. This is a little pocket of time. Over the course of history, there's always been little pockets that's changed the course of human events. And we're in one of them right now. The advent of blockchain and cryptocurrencies and everything associated with them, it's going to revolutionize. I hate using that word, but there it is again. Some words are just accurate. We are in revolutionary times. And when you're in the midst of it, if you recognize it, it's very exciting. And you just want to be a part of it. If you know there's an important revolution going on, you want to participate. You want to take advantage of it, so that a generation from now you can tell your kids, you know what, I bought that guy when it was at 1/1000th of a cent or whatever. You want to have those bragging rights. Yeah, I was there when this happened. I was there when that happened, and that's a very alluring thought. And I think as people start to realize this, I mean, what are the stats, Rob? That only 4% of the world population is into cryptos. Yeah, well, it's pretty low.
It is really low. It's something. I think it's a little bit less than that. Actually, I think it's like 3.4 or something like that. Don't quote us there, ladies and gentlemen. What we know is that it's low, but what we also do know with certainty is that it has year-on-year growth of more than 100%, which means this year, if there's 3% of the world's population, next year there'll be 6, then there'll be 12, then there'll be 24, and then so on. And it's said that by 2025, 26, in that cycle, in the next 4 or 5 years, there'll be more than 3 billion people in the crypto and blockchain space. So now you're talking about a percentage of the world's population that will be there. And in fact, nothing in human history has had a higher uptake than crypto and blockchain technologies. And that's because it represents the alternative financial system. And Ed and I are going to have a lot to say about that, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to like these conversations.
So I got to ask you, out of fairness, you asked me what was my bit of advice for people just getting into cryptos. So what's your advice?
Do it in order. You have to find some sort of logical order when you're getting into crypto, because you'll look at YouTube and people are talking about NFTs, and then you'll go to another video and someone's talking about yield farming. You go to another video and some guy's talking about staking, and you're like scratching your head going, what are all of these things? Because they don't seem to be related. That word crypto and that other word blockchain is a catch-all for all of those things. But when you look at it in its entirety, you're like, well, I don't understand NFTs. Why would someone pay $10,000 for a JPEG on their phone and not own the copyright to it? It's a very, very confusing topic if no one's explained it to you properly. So what I would say is the biggest thing that you've got to do is learn this in order. And over at the Crypto Cartel, we've got an academy there that puts it in some sort of logical order for you. And you also have to understand that crypto is the alternative system. And my experience, Ed, I don't know about you, man, but my experience is that 10 out of 10 people get involved in crypto because they want to make money. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's why people get involved in the stock market. That's why people buy investment properties, because they want to make money. They want a better future for themselves. But 10 out of 10 people I talk to don't realize or recognize that crypto is actually a war. And we've got a podcast coming up that talks about that very topic. And, they're big, bold statements and they're big words to use around something like crypto. But when you think about it and when you understand what's actually going on, people's first venture into crypto, when they first decide they want to buy a bit of Bitcoin or they want to get involved in some sort of deal or buy some ETH or something like that, can often be really difficult and challenging. So they sign themselves up at an exchange, they go and do all their KYC and validate themselves, and then they go and try and put their credit card in there and the bank goes, you can't buy crypto. But hang on, Mr. Bank, when I put my money in there, you never asked me where I got my money from. You just let me put it in there so you can lend it out to whoever else you want and make your money off it. But then when I want to spend it on what I want to spend it on, you say no. So what you'll discover is that banks don't like crypto. Banks and governments don't like it because they can't tax it and they can't control it. And it represents a direct threat to the existing financial and fiat system that we're faced with, that we live under today. And we started out at the top of this show by talking about that and by saying that the system we live under is fake. The banking system is deeply corrupt. The politics of it is intertwined with the banking system, and they're both corrupt. And the cartel that controls us all are bloody evil. They are really, really evil. And we've got a lot of stories that we can pull out and share to demonstrate to you exactly what that means. And that's not us saying it. It's not me and Ed here with some tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theory going on. These are just the facts that are already in evidence from the history that we've all lived through in the last decade or so. So, crypto is a war. Understand that you're getting involved in a war and understand that that's actually a pretty full-on and scary thing as well. But don't let that put you off, because it's exciting to be part of this space, and it's a really fast way to wealth, and it's a fast way to intergenerational wealth as well. Well, Ed, it's been fun sharing a little bit about me, and I'm sure as we move forward with these podcasts, people will get to know more about you and me together as well, which is really cool. But for now, I think that serves as a nice introduction to us. So let's take a little break and wrap this one up. Well, Ed, we covered a lot of ground on this show already. I think the introduction ran a little bit longer than what I actually anticipated, but I think that's the nature of these podcasts. And the thing I like the most about podcasting is it just gives us the opportunity to share what we want to share and explore the opinions that we've got as well. And I know people are going to really enjoy that content. I wanted to ask you if we covered everything you wanted to cover on this introduction episode, or did we catch it all for you?
No, we didn't cover anything at all, really. We just started to scratch the surface. But I think for today, I think that just about wraps it up.
All right, awesome. That's good, man. If people want to connect with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Well, you can catch me on ed at thecryptocartel.io. That's ed at thecryptocartel.io. Or on our YouTube channel called Hey Ed. Just do a search for Hey Ed. Or you can reach me over at the Crypto Cartel, of course. Now, I'm super active over there, so you can reach me through the messages there, and I'll get back to you right away. And how about you, Rob?
Same, mate. Over at the Crypto Cartel, or my email is just rob at thecryptocartel.io, or on my Instagram at rob.brus77. As always, ladies and gentlemen, the links and all of the links that we talk about on these shows will be right there in the show notes. So if you're on YouTube, just scroll down and you'll see them there. And if you're listening to this on a podcasting app, just take a little peek and everything will be right there for you. So make sure you click those links, head on over, join the cartel. If you've got a message for Ed and I, drop us an email. We'll get back to you there as well. Nice and simple. All right, that just about wraps it up for the show. But before we go, if you're listening to this, we would love a review on Apple Podcasts, as that always helps us out. If you've got some value out of today's show, go ahead and leave us a review there. That would be really useful. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to just scroll down and hit that subscribe button for us as well. All right, that just about wraps it up now. Ed, do you have a parting comment for us, mate? We're going to end these shows with a parting comment, a final piece of wisdom. What have you got for this very first one?
Well, I think the smartest thing someone can do right now is to make sure they put us on their podcast listening schedule. Make us a habit. We'll grow on you over time, I promise. So, I hope to see and hear from a lot of you guys. So, Rob, this is my very first podcast ever. So my first experience, and I'm really looking forward to it for all sorts of reasons.
Awesome, mate. That's great. All right, let's get out of here and wrap this one up. We'll see you next time. It's bye for now.